Hello, and welcome to the Archives. We're back again with part 4 of how to play Netrunner. I was originally only going to do the timing structure of a run on this, but I thought it would be helpful as well to do the timing structure of turns, as it's not that long. So, we're going to be doing timing structures today, and having a look at things. Now, I'm going to put up some images here as I'm talking, directly from the Android Netrunner rulebook, just to help facilitate what I'm going to be saying. Okay? Okay. Now, first off, we have a few symbols that we need to do, and those are as follows. We have this wonderful little rotating green arrow. That means that paid abilities can be triggered. Now, a paid ability is any ability on a card that does not require a click to use. This is ones that only cost credits. These are abilities that are you trash a card in order to trigger a paid ability that just has like a trash cost, or maybe a trash cost and a credit cost. Jackson Howard is one that has a very famous one that is simply remove Jackson Howard from the game in order to trigger it. So you can literally just pick him up at any time. It's basically like trashing him, but instead of putting him in your archives, your discard pile, you set him aside and he is not used for the remainder of the game. There's also a few agendas that have forfeit this agenda in order to trigger an effect. Those are also paid abilities. We have this wonderful little blue starbursty symbol. That means that non-ice cards can be rezzed. And then we have the little crystalline thing, which is the symbol that's on agendas, is that agendas can be scored. Now we're going to look at the corporation's structure for turns. So I'm going to pop this up here. Now the corporation has 3 phases in its turn. Each turn. The first turn is that the draw phase begins. Now before the corporation does anything, they have an opportunity to trigger paid abilities, to res non-ice cards, and to score agendas if those agendas have been advanced enough. Before anything else happens, before the turn even begins, they can do any or all of those things as many times as possible that they are capable of. Usually, there are cards that, like Pad Campaign and the Adonis Campaign, the Eve Campaign, that give you money when your turn begins. The res non-ice cards, you res them before your turn begins, then your turn begins and they pay out. So it all depends on what you want to do with that. That's 1.1 in the draw phase. 1.2 is that the turn begins. When your turn begins, conditionals meet their trigger conditions. So if you have any cards which has, such as the Pad Campaign is gain 1 credit when your turn begins, their trigger conditions have met and they would pay out. Then 1.3 of the draw phase is draw 1 card. That is your mandatory draw as the corp. So that happens before you get to do anything, before you get to take any actions, spend any clicks. Now you have the corporation's action phase. Now the corporation's action phase is divided up into 2.1, where paid abilities can be triggered, non-ice cards can be rezzed, and agendas can be scored before any clicks are spent. 2.2 is to take actions or spend your clicks. You've got 3 of those. After each action, paid abilities can be triggered, non-ice cards can be rezzed, and agendas can be scored again. So that happens. Now, one of the things to keep in mind is that in the corporation's turn, after you trigger paid abilities, the runner has an opportunity to trigger paid abilities as well after you do. And after they trigger a paid ability, you get a chance to trigger a paid ability again. So it kind of goes back and forth like that. Then we have the discard phase. The discard phase is where 3.1, discard down to maximum hand size, which is usually 5, unless it has been altered. 3.2, paid abilities can be triggered and non-ice cards can be rezzed. But agendas cannot be scored during the discard phase. Agendas have to be scored before then. And then the end of the turn. Simple enough. Now we move on to the runner's turn. The runner's turn is, if anything, even more simple. It only has 2 phases. The first phase is the runner's action phase. They can trigger paid abilities. They can res non-ice cards, which of course they don't have any non-ice cards. 1.2, their turn begins. When your turn begins, conditionals meet their trigger conditions. So if they have any cards out installed that have when your turn begins, do something, that happens. Then 1.3, take their actions. Their actions, they get 4 clicks. They can spend those 4 clicks. And after each action, paid abilities can be triggered and non-ice cards can be rezzed. Simple, to the point. We already covered the actions of the corp and the actions of the runner in the previous episode. Then we move on to the runner's discard phase after they've spent their 4 actions. It is pretty much the same as the corp's discard phase. Discard down to maximum hand size. Then they can trigger paid abilities or res non-ice cards. And then they end their turn. Very simple. Now we get on to the much more difficult. The timing structure of a run. Okay. Now, those same symbols that I showed you before, the green arrow for paid abilities can be triggered, and the blue starburst for non-ice cards can be rezzed, they apply here. Alright? So let's look at step 1 of the timing structure of a run. Step 1 states, the runner initiates a run and declares the attacked server. If the attacked server has 1 or more pieces of ice protecting it, go to step 2. If the attacked server does not have ice protecting it, go to step 4. We're going to go on the opinion that it has ice for now. So very simple. The runner initiates the run and declares which server they're going at. One of the centrals, HQ, R&D, or the archives, or one of the remotes. If there's ice protecting it, we go to step 2. Step 2, as you can see, is a much bigger block of text. The runner approaches the outermost piece of ice not already approached on the attack server. So, right there, that alone is a very confusing statement. The outermost piece of ice not already approached. Basically, what this means is that you start at the outside and work your way in. I believe step 2 repeats for each encounter as things go. But regardless, they approach the outermost piece of ice. 2.1 happens. Paid abilities can be triggered. Now that's starting with the runner because it's usually the runner's turn in whenever a run happens, but not always. Basically, from what I understand, it is whoever's turn it is. If the corp is forcing the runner to make a run on their turn, then the corp gets to do paid abilities first. The corp gets to decide. But usually it's the runner's turn when runs happen. So the runner would get to use paid abilities first. Then 2.2. The runner decides whether to continue the run. So the runner is approaching an unres piece of ice. We see then the runner then decides whether they want to continue it. So either the runner jacks out where you go to step 6, or the runner continues, where you go to 2.3. But the runner cannot jack out if this is the first ice approached this run. So if they have encountered or approached no other ice, they cannot jack out until after they've encountered the first piece. So we'll say our runner is continuing. So our runner continues moving on. 2.3, approached ice can be rezzed. So the corp can then res ice, followed by paid abilities can be triggered, non-ice cards can be rezzed. So the corp can res their ice, and then the corp can res a non-ice card in the server at this point. 2.4, players check to see if the approach ice is rezzed. If the approach ice is rezzed, go to 3. If the approach ice is unrezzed, so if the corp decides not to res it, the runner passes it. Go to 2 if there is another piece of ice protecting the server. Go to 4 if there's not. So basically step 2 repeats for each piece of ice. Especially if they don't res it and they just pass by it. So we'll go to step 3. The ice has been rezzed. Step 3. The runner encounters a piece of ice. Step 3.1. Icebreakers can interact with the encountered ice. Paid abilities can be triggered at this point. Now this is important because paid abilities are what boosts ice strength or icebreaker strength and breaks subroutines on ice. 3.2. Resolve all subroutines not broken on the encountered ice. Either the run ends, go to 6, or the run continues if there is another piece of ice protecting the server, go to 2. If there's not another piece of ice, go to 4. Okay, fair enough. So if there was a second piece of ice, we would go back up to 2. The runner would approach it, decide whether to continue the run or jack out. If they continue the run, the next piece of ice can be rezzed. We check to see if it's rezzed. Of course it's rezzed. Then we go back. The runner encounters the second piece of ice, and step 3 repeats. So it's a little complicated here. Now we'll go to step 4. We'll say that there wasn't another piece of ice. Just one piece of ice on this server. The runner decides whether to continue the run. When encountered conditionals meet their trigger conditions. So, if there is any when encountered conditionals at this point, they would happen. 4.1, paid abilities can be triggered. 4.2, the runner decides whether to continue the run again. The runner either jacks out, go to 6, or the runner continues the run, go to 4.3. So we'll say the runner continues. 4.3, paid abilities can be triggered. Non-ice cards can be rezzed. So the corp can res a card at that point. And we see what's going to happen then, if they happen to have a protective card in their server. 4.4, the run is considered successful when successful conditionals meet their trigger conditions. So there's plenty of cards that basically say, make a run, if it is successful, do a thing. This is when they would happen at 4.4, before accessing cards. Because 4.5 is access cards, then go to 5. If an agenda is accessed, the runner steals it. If a card with a trash cost is accessed, the runner may pay its trash cost to trash it. All access cards not stolen or trashed are returned to the server in their previous states. So if a card was rezzed when the runner accessed it, it stays rezzed. If it wasn't rezzed, it's unrezzed. One thing to note is that the runner, unless it is specifically stated by a card ability, a runner has to access all cards in a server when they make a successful run and choose to access. Step 5, after accessing cards, the run ends. Now, if at any point the runner jacks out or the run ends, it says to go to 6. 6, the run ends and is considered to be unsuccessful. When unsuccessful, conditionals meet their trigger conditions. Which means if there are any cards that the corp has that is like, you know, if a run is unsuccessful, this happens. This is that point when it would happen. If the runner jacked out or the run ended because they hit a piece of ice they couldn't get past. Simple and to the point. But as I said, the timing structure of a run is a little confusing to go at with all of this, like this little wall of text here that we have. But the basic premise is that the runner declares a run, declares a server, runs at it. The runner decides at each piece of ice before they continue and before the ice is rezzed, because if the corp is rezzing a piece of ice, the runner has to encounter it. The runner can't choose to not encounter a piece of ice after it's been rezzed. They have to decide before it is rezzed. So the runner decides whether to continue or to jack out. If the runner continues, the ice is rezzed. The runner encounters the ice, has to break it with their icebreakers if they can. If they can't, any subroutines that they cannot break, fire. At that point, the runner then decides to continue the run to another piece of ice. If there's more. If there's not, the runner has to decide whether to continue the run or jack out before a run is considered successful. If they decide to continue a run, the run is successful, they access cards, steal agendas, can trash things, and after that, the run's over. So it's actually simple, but all of the timing structures where the paid abilities and the non-ice cards can be rezzed, as you saw, those are the really niggly details that get in there. The really fiddly bits that you kind of have to keep an eye on and know that, okay, I can do a paid ability here. I can do a paid ability here. I can res a non-ice card here to cause trouble for the runner. Or the runner can use paid abilities at those points to make things easier for him. That's basically what it is about. So that's pretty much it for the timing structure for turns and the timing structure for a run. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope you've been enjoying my little instructional videos on how to play Netrunner. I hope they have been helpful to some people. I hope I've managed to shed a little light on some things, maybe. I decided to do this simply to do that, to shed some light, to help people, because I know I had trouble figuring out things when I was first starting Netrunner. So I thought I would do my best to try to explain it. I hope I've been successful in that regard. But thank you so much for watching. As always, if you like what I'm doing, please give that like button a tap. Give that subscribe button a tap as well, if you haven't already, so you can be kept apprised of when I do new videos. And throw a comment in the comment section. What do you think of my little how-to series here? Can you think of anything else that I might be able to tell you guys about on how to play Netrunner? If you have any suggestions of any more parts for this one, please throw those comments in the comment section. Let me know. I would love to get a discussion going with some people. So do all that, and until next time, my friends, you all take care and keep running.